Hello YouTube, hello viewers, and welcome back to another episode of creating our social media API using Laravel. We pretty much finished the activation section of our API, so we can now activate users, register users, and when they forget their passwords, we can reset them. In today's session, we're going to look at how do we start looking at uploading users' images. So let's say, for example, they want to use a profile image, for example, or if they want to just have loads of images on their profile, I guess we need some way to store them and use them. Now, in this case, we're going to be looking at things like just local storage. So inside our project, this is entirely up to you, but you remember the bigger the file size that you have, and this had to go, for example, into the World Wide Web, for example, you'll be using your own server storage. So sometimes it's good to use things like S3 buckets, or you could look at things like maybe Amazon storage. There's loads of different ways you could store images and then pull them. But in this case, we're just going to use local storage for the system. It's going to be broken into a few parts, just like all the other ones, because there's quite a lot we need to cover. The first, we're going to just set up our requests and our endpoints, and I kind of explain what we're going to be doing. And yeah, so we just might as well get cracking with that. Cool. So let's jump into our code base. And as you remembered last time, I left you some of this homework to do. I'm not really going to go through because it might waste some time, but I'm sure by now you kind of got used to creating a service, creating a function, and then passing in the parameters into that function. It's pretty straightforward now, so I don't need to repeat myself over and over again. But what we are going to do this session is we need to start setting up how are we going to store these images, because if you think about our table, so inside our database, we've got nothing here to store our location of our images. It'll be fine saving it in the folder structure, but what happens if we just want to, maybe use a table and then get all the references to that user ID and all his images that he has, instead of calling storage and then passing in an ID onto a storage folder, for example, and getting all the data back that way. So there are different ways you can do it. I mean, you don't have to follow my routine, but again, if you're following these tutorials, I guess you're following my route anyways. So, all right, so let's go into our command prompt. And this is where we're going to do some voodoo magic inside the command prompt. I have got some feedback that was too small, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for you guys. And I'm just going to jump into my Docker container. So I'm just going to jump into my container. Obviously, if you don't have a Docker container, however you run your artisan commands would be the way you're going to do it. So I'm just going to go into my project. And if I type in artisan, we get the full list of artisan commands. And I'm only doing this because I'm just repeating myself and just showing you that you can see different things. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a new migration script here. But we're also going to be creating a model that's going to be associated to this. So we could just do, I think I can search. Hopefully I've got something called model already in here. I don't think so, but it's okay. We can make one. Okay, so we're going to do artisan. And then if we look for model, there should be make model here. So we're going to do that. So we're going to go artisan, make model. And we're going to call this model, I don't know, user files. Okay, we won't actually call this user files, we'll just call it user file. Because if we have a look at some of our other models inside our code base, we'll notice that none of them, if I can find our models, we have other things here, trees, surfaces. So if you have a look here, our models, which should really be in folders, to be honest, that was an error on my point in the beginning of the series, but you can see they're not pluralized, so they haven't got like S's and stuff at the end, they're just singular words. And we're going to do the same for this model. Going back into our code base, we're just going to call it user file and then -m, which is going to create us a migration script. It just makes it nice and easy for us to manage if we're doing that. So inside our code base now, we should have a new model called user file. Perfect. And we should now have inside the database migration scripts, we have a new migration. Perfect. So just some things we want to have in here is we're going to have $table. And we want to make sure that we have a string here. And as you can imagine, we want to just keep the name of the file. So we can just call this file_name. In this instance would be perfect, I guess. And then we need to make sort of like a link to our user table. Now we've already done that. If we go into our create user activation tokens, we've got this foreign key reference to our users table. So we're just going to copy that and we're going to paste that into our create user files table here, just underneath. So we're making a reference. So this is just a generic increment of an ID. We already know this. Then we got the string name, which is will be the name of our file. And then we're just making a reference to our user table. We have timestamps, and then what we can also have on here is because maybe the user might delete the files, but we don't want to actually delete them, but we'll just remove them. Again, this is up to you. You might want to just remove it directly off your system, or you could just keep it on system, but just make sure that the users can't see them by using these soft deletes. Okay, so that's done. Pretty straightforward, right? So if we run our PHP, if we just run artisan migrate, this should now add in my new table. So if we look in Commander, all I did is write artisan migrate again. Sorry, I'm still getting used to the swapping of screens. My apologies. So we run artisan migrate, and this has created our 2 new files, which is perfect. If we go into Heidi now, just refresh our table here, and you'll notice that we do have, if I can find it, user files here. And if we have a look at data, we can see we've got file name, user ID, created at, updated at, and deleted at. And that's what the soft delete does. It adds this new column here, which is the deleted at, which is pretty cool. Okay, so all we have to do now is think, how are we going to set this up and make this work? Well, it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to follow the same steps that we've done all the time. So we jump onto our PHP store, and we're going to create a new API route. So because the user needs to be logged in for this, remember we had this group called auth API, and this is basically saying, okay, we've got this users, and I don't know why I've separated this. This is a bit weird because we've got one under auth API here, and we'll call this user and users. So we'll just use this one, I guess, because this is plugged into the auth API. So this basically means they need to be logged in to use the endpoint. And because they're uploading an image under their name, we want to make sure that they are actually logged in. So we're just going to duplicate this. Now remember, Laravel 8's different with routing. I will be making a separate video later on how to use routes and stuff. It's not any different. The difference is that you just change the way how our actions look now. You actually call on the class and then attach the function name inside that class. So that's really the only change. It's only a small change, but people are getting a little bit confused of how that works. Right, so obviously this is going to be a post because we're posting a picture, and we could just call this, I don't know, image. Okay, so basically it's going to be user image, and actually let's just call this upload. So image upload. Okay, so in the URL string, this is going to be user / image upload. And it's not, we don't want it to go into the status controller. We're going to go into the user controller, and we're going to have this as store image as our function name. Okay. Or actually, let's make a new controller this series. So let's jump into our commander. All right, and let's make a new controller. So let's have a look up here inside all the information. We should have one called make controller. Here we go. So we got one called make controller. So if we go down and we do artisan make controller, and if we look in our PHP storm and look at our controller names, HTTP controllers, you'll see they're all singular, no plurals. So we're going to stick with the same naming convention. So we're going to go back to our Heidi, and we're going to call this user image controller. Okay, hit enter, and that should make our controller. Just so we can separate it. We don't want to keep everything in specific controllers. I mean, you can if you want, but I like keeping things separate. That way we can find out if anything's going wrong. So if we're going to, we're going to tag onto our user image controller, and we'll just have this as store. Could have kept it as store images, I guess. It's entirely up to you how you want to have it. So when we hit this endpoint, we're going to go into this controller, and we're going to use this thing called store. again, we've done this many times, so going through this over and over again is crazy, but we'll just carry on doing it. So we're going to go into user image controller, and we're going to make our new function. So public function, and we named that function, I've already forgotten, store. That's what we named the function. Okay, and we're going to be taking our request. We are going to make a custom request. So don't worry about that one. We will be making custom ones. Especially when I've got that already there. It's a bit strange. Oh, and then $request. Okay, and if we do a DD here and we just say higher, like so, just so we can test to see if this route is working. Let's jump into our commander. Just do artisan route list. It will give us our full list of routes, and because it's so zoomed in, it feels very weird. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, and we now have this route here called API user image upload. So we're going to need to add that into our Postman. So I'm going to go to Postman, and we're just going to make a new folder. Call this user. So we can keep things a little bit more separate now. And we can, I don't know, let's just copy this, for example. So just create that and then drag that into users. Obviously change the name to image upload. We definitely do not need these fields. We're going to delete them all. And also in this body, we're going to delete now because we're going to be putting images into them instead. And let's hit save. And then we know the route's a little bit different, because if we looked back into our commander or into our command prompt, it was just API /users/upload. So if we had to add that into our Postman, so we have API user image upload, hit the send button, we can see that I am currently unauthenticated, and that's good because remember we wanted to check to see if the user was actually authenticated and we can use them. Now the good thing is we do have a user that should already be in our system, which was Bob, because we changed his password, and we're going to grab his token. Grab his token, like so. And if we hop into our image upload, authorization, and we're going to do a bearer token. Oh, I've just copied that by accident. So just copy, load, and paste, and hit send. So we get our dump, which is perfect. And if we have a preview of that, we can see that we have higher. So we know now, because that user is authenticated, we can use this route. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that that user has a specific route we can follow and they are authenticated. Otherwise, anyone could just upload onto your system and that could get pretty messy. Cool. So now we've done that. All we have to do now is just set up our request. And our request is going to look a little bit different than what it has done in previous videos. So we should already have a request folder, and we're just going to duplicate this one. So we're going to refactor and copy this file, and we're just going to call this user image upload request. Very long-winded, but doesn't really matter. And we'll do the same here. So we need to make sure we change the name. Otherwise, it's going to shout at us. And we're just going to make a few changes to the rules, because all we really want from here is the image, so the file. And obviously the name we're going to pass into Postman. So inside this section here, inside Postman, in the body, we're going to be sending, this will be a file here, but we're going to probably call it file, right? So, or because we're already setting this to file, it might already know that it's not there, but I don't think so. So we'll always make sure that we call it file, and then we'll be selecting file and uploading that. So again, we're just going to switch back into our code base, and inside the file, there's a few things we need to be aware about. One, we need to make sure that it's required, because what's the point of uploading something if it's not there? Then the next thing is to check what type of file is it. Now, because we're using images, we use these things called MIMs, and basically these refer to anything. So this could be like .doc, .pdf. It could be anything that we're going to use as a file type. But in this case, we're going to be using PNG only or JPEGs. Okay, so we've been very specific of what type of file type we're going to upload onto our server. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have a value of max. And this is going to say, well, how big can this image be that gets uploaded? And we're going to make sure that it's only 2048. Or yeah, 2048, which is 2 meg, right? So a 2 meg upload is more than sufficient for any images that we upload. Obviously, you don't really want to put too much, otherwise your server might crash if you put far too much files, and then people will be downloading, uploading, and it could get very, very messy very quickly. Okay, so now we have that. We're going to put that into our controller now. So we're going to change our request. We're going to put our new one we've just made. So user image request, upload request. Hit save. And now if we try and send this with inside Postman, so let's go into Postman and hit send. You'll notice that we get this error here saying the given data was invalid, and obviously because the file field is required. And at the moment, the file field that we have here is empty. Actually, I didn't have it selected. But if I had to select it and hit send, let's see what happens. It still says it's required because we don't even have a file that we've been uploaded yet. And I've got two here. So we've got a JPEG and a PNG. So let's select the JPEG first and let's hit send. We're getting a weird message here saying the file must be a file of type JPEG. Oh, I've spelled JPEG wrong here. This is why we're having this issue. So let's go into Postman, and it's JPEG with an EG. There we go. So an EG we want there. Hit save. Let's go back into our Postman again. Let's go back to Postman. Hit send, and now we get our DD of higher because we know that that is a valid file because it's a JPEG and obviously less than 2 meg. We can do the same with the PNG. So let's select the PNG, which is this random one here. Hit the send button, and again we get the DD of higher. Okay, so that's the way how our form request should work. We should never just use request because that could be issues, and we need to make sure we have validation built within it. Otherwise, we're just going to come across a few issues that you don't really want inside your project. Okay, and the last step we're going to do for the setup of uploading images, and the final step, is within inside our project, we need somewhere where we're going to store all these images. Now, locally inside our projects, if we just close down all these folder structures, you'll notice we have this public folder here. And this public folder is where we can store images of whatever we want to store really. And we also have the storage directory, which has an app public. Now these are linked together pretty much, these two. You can do this thing called a storage link inside your project. Again, you can look this up on the documents, but obviously this is an intermediate course, so you should really know how to link up your file structure. So what we can do here is, when a user is going to create a new image, that image is going to be stored onto our system here, but we don't want to just have thousands and thousands and thousands of images in one directory. We want to make sure that it's kind of clean. Otherwise, we're just going to have, again, loads and loads of images. Yes, okay, inside our database, we know where the file is or the file name is, but obviously we want to make sure everything's nice and clean. So the principle is we'll have, and just to write it out in pseudocode, I guess, is the structure would be the public folder that we have currently there, and then we'll have another folder called images. And then what's going to happen is we're going to attach, in this instance, the user ID. So we know that that belongs to that user ID. And then in there would be the image.png, for example. And we're going to store all the images like that inside that directory. That way we just know it's nice and clean. And then if we ever have to go back and we need to check that, I don't know, what images that users got on our actual server, we can quite easily pick up the ID, go into the folder, probably download all those images and can check them if we want to, I guess. So let's make that work. So in public, we're just going to make a new directory, and we're just going to call this images, like so. And obviously we can't do the ID yet because we could have thousands and thousands of users with different IDs. And this is where this magic is going to happen within this store function of when we create the image, or when we accept it, and we're going to save it. When we save it, we're going to save it like this, where we'll have the ID and then the name of the request of the image that comes through. So it looks something like request. So let's just, again, we just pseudocoding here. So request. So again, this is if you want to do your little bit of homework here, but we can just do that like so. And that's it. That's all it is really. And that's how that folder structure is going to look. And obviously that file is probably going to be like bob.jpg is what that would be as a response back, if you think about it like that. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this session. Again, don't forget, I'm splitting these into parts just so it's easy for people to keep up. Next session, we'll be looking at actually putting this into practice. So how do we actually get the files to upload? Don't forget, I do have a Git repo. So if you are behind, the Git repo is there. It's all in my description. We have got Discord. So if you ever want to chat to me or anything, there's a Discord there if you want to do that. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you liked it, make sure you hit the like button. If you really liked it, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.